The sun dipped low behind the jagged mesa, painting the desert sky with streaks of crimson and gold. Dust swirled along the narrow canyon trail, carrying the scent of sagebrush and the faint tang of iron from long-dried creek beds. A lone woman rode her horse slowly, her eyes scanning the horizon as though searching for something she dared not name. Her name was Isabella Hart, 30 years old, with the hardened grace of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. Her auburn hair, streaked with dust and sweat, clung to her face, but her dark green eyes held a fire that refused to be extinguished out ahead. The canyon widened into a hidden ravine, shadowed by towering cliffs. Isabella's horse, a weary sorrel, stumbled over the rocky terrain, but she pressed on. She had heard the stories the tailies whispered in taverns and trading posts of a man who lived alone, a warrior of the Apache who had survived horrors no outsider could comprehend. They said he knew the dark reality of life and that none who sought him ever returned unchanged. Her hands trembled, though she tried to mask it, gripping the reins tightly. I will give you everything," she muttered under her breath, almost as a promise to herself. The words felt heavy, almost sacred, carrying all the desperation of a woman cornered by fate. She dismounted as the shadows deepened, the last light of day slipping behind the cliffs. The air was cool, carrying an uneasy silence, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk. A low fire burned at the edge of the ravine, smoke curling lazily toward the sky. And there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, a striking figure of raw strength and solemn authority. His long black hair framed a face carved with scars and hardship, eyes dark as the desert night, sharp as obsidian knives. He was simply called Apache by those who dared speak of him, and he regarded her with a caution that bordered on disdain. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice deep calm, yet carrying the weight of mountains. Each word seemed measured, deliberate, like a man who had lived through death and come out hollow on the other side. "I have nowhere else to go," Isabella said, her voice shaking. "Please, I need your help. I will give you everything, my lands, my gold, whatever you want." She fell to her knees, dust clinging to her dress, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. "Please, don't turn me away." Apache's eyes studied her, unblinking. He saw the truth in her eyes, the desperation, the pain, the fear. But he also saw the lies she carried in her heart, the hidden motives, the sins of a life lived among privilege and power. He had witnessed too much betrayal to be easily swayed. He had survived wars, massacres, and betrayal so dark that even the desert seemed pale in comparison. "You speak of giving, yet you clutch your fears as if they are a weapon," he said slowly, stepping closer. His presence was like the desert itself, vast, unyielding, dangerous, yet strangely comforting. "Do you know what it costs to survive where I have? Do you know the darkness that waits for those who enter my world?" I don't care," Isabella cried, rising unsteadily. "I can face it, anything. I can't go back. Her voice broke, but she didn't finish. The threat behind her words was unspoken, yet it hung in the air like a shadow. Apache remained silent, his gaze fixed on her. The wind rustled through the canyon, carrying whispers of the past, of bloodshed, of lost love, of unbroken oaths. He knew the dark reality of life, yes, and he could feel the storm within her, a storm that had been brewing long before she stumbled into his hidden ravine. Finally, he spoke, almost softly. "If you stay, nothing will be the same again. You will see things that will change your soul, and there is no turning back. Are you ready to pay the price?" Isabella swallowed hard, her chest tight. She had given everything to reach this moment. Her family had betrayed her. Her town had turned its back, and her future was a desert as barren as the land around her. And yet, in this man's presence, amidst the shadows and firelight, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. "I will," she whispered. "I will do whatever it takes. I have no choice." Apache's eyes softened slightly, a rare crack in the armor of a man who had seen too much. "Then come. But remember, once the darkness touches you, there is no coming back." As Isabella followed him into the depths of the ravine, the last rays of sun vanished, leaving only the quiet murmur of the desert night and the distant cry of the hawk. The journey had begun. The ravine grew darker as Isabella followed Apache deeper into its twisting paths. Shadows stretched like long fingers across the jagged cliffs, and the air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of damp earth and smoke from the small fire they had left behind. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the canyon itself were testing her resolve. Apache walked with silent purpose, his bare feet crunching against the stones. Isabella tried to match his pace, but the fear in her chest made her legs shake. She had followed him because she had nowhere else to turn, but now that she was here, in the heart of the desert and in the presence of a man who carried both mystery and danger like a second skin, doubt began to creep in. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice low, almost swallowed by the canyon's echo. Apache glanced at her briefly, his dark eyes reflecting the faint glow of the fading sun. "You'll see soon enough. The world, you know, it ends here. The truths you've been running from will find you." Isabella swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep walking. She remembered her vow, "I will give you everything." The words tasted bitter on her tongue now, heavy with uncertainty, but she clung to them as if they were a lifeline. They reached a clearing where the desert floor fell away into a shallow gorge. In its center lay a small, rugged encampment, partially hidden by boulders and the shadow of a cliff. Tents of leather and hides were set with meticulous care, and a few horses grazed near a trickle of water that shimmered like silver in the dim light. Smoke curled lazily from a fire where a few Apache men, equally imposing and alert, were tending to evening tasks. Apache motioned for Isabella to stop. "Do not speak until I say you may. Watch and learn first. Some things cannot be explained with words alone." Isabella nodded, trembling slightly. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to look, taking in the scene. There was discipline here, yes, but also an unspoken tension, a constant awareness of danger that even the firelight could not erase. The warriors moved with precision, their eyes sharp, hands quick to respond to any threat. And then she saw it. A man, hunched and barely visible, was being led toward the fire. His clothing was torn, his body battered. He looked as if he had been dragged from a battlefield, his eyes hollow and haunted. The warriors ignored his cries, their movements cold and practiced. Apache stood silently, observing. "This," Isabella whispered, unable to look away, "this is why you said the darkness touches everything." Apache's jaw tightened. "Yes, life is not kind. It never has been. I know its weight, its cruelty. You cannot unsee it once you have. That is why I warned you." The injured man collapsed near the fire, and a warrior handed him a bowl of water. He drank greedily, shivering despite the warm glow. Apache stepped closer, his presence commanding. Without a word, he knelt beside the man, placing his hands on his shoulders. The injured man flinched at first, then relaxed, as if recognizing a strange, unspoken authority in the warrior. "See that?" Apache said quietly, standing and turning to Isabella. "I do not heal because I want praise or reward. I heal because it must be done. The world is harsh, unforgiving, and filled with suffering. You must understand this if you hope to survive what is coming." Isabella felt a chill crawl over her spine. She had believed she could bargain her way into safety, that promises and pleas would protect her. Now she realized that nothing in this place could be bought or begged. Survival here required understanding the rules of a life hardened by blood and betrayal. "Can I?" Help him? She asked, voice trembling. Unsure whether she even wanted the answer, Apache looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of something softer in his eyes, not warmth exactly, but acknowledgement. Perhaps. But first, you must confront your own fear. Only then can you act without destroying yourself in the process. Isabella clenched her fists, determination rising despite her terror. She had come too far to turn back now. If she truly wanted to live, and if she truly wanted to understand Apache's world, she would have to step into the darkness with him. The sun disappeared completely, leaving the canyon in shadow. The firelight danced across Apache's muscular form, highlighting the scars and the tribal jewelry that marked him as both protector and predator in equal measure. Isabella felt both fear and awe, knowing she had crossed a threshold. There would be no going back. I'm ready, she whispered. And in the silence of the desert night, Apache's eyes met hers, holding secrets that words could never convey. The journey into darkness had begun. Night had fully claimed the canyon, and the fire's glow painted the surrounding cliffs with an otherworldly orange hue. Isabella sat at the edge of the encampment, her knees drawn to her chest, trying to steady her trembling hands. The events of the evening weighed heavily on her. She had expected danger, but nothing had prepared her for the raw, unrelenting reality of Apache's world. Apache stood a few feet away, silent and vigilant, his dark eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting a shadow to leap from the cliffs. His presence was both intimidating and oddly comforting. Despite the raw power in his frame, there was a meticulous calm to him, a certainty born from surviving hardships no one else could endure. His long black hair fell over his shoulders, and his tribal jewelry glinted faintly in the firelight, symbols of both heritage and the scars of experience. Isabella swallowed hard. How do you bear it?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. "All the suffering, all the pain. The darkness?" Apache's gaze didn't waver from the cliffs. "Because I must. I have seen what happens when one refuses to confront reality. People die. Others suffer. And those who pretend it doesn't exist are swallowed by it." He finally turned to her, and for the first time, Isabella felt the full weight of his gaze. It was like staring into a canyon itself vast, unforgiving, and full of secrets too dark to name. She nodded, though uncertainty clawed at her. I thought I could bargain my way into safety. I thought that if I offered everything, it would be enough." Apache stepped closer, the firelight flickering across the planes of his muscular torso. "Nothing is ever enough in this world," he said quietly. "Not money, not promises, not pleas. Only understanding, courage, and the willingness to face the truth can keep you alive." A rustle from the edge of the camp drew their attention. A young boy, no older than 12, limped into the clearing, clutching a bundle of herbs and water. Apache's hand went instinctively to the knife at his waist, his stance protective yet non-aggressive. The boy froze, fear evident in his eyes, but the warrior's calm presence reassured him. "Bring him here," Apache instructed, his voice low and steady. The boy obeyed, placing the herbs and water near the injured man from earlier. "He's been trying to help," Apache said, nodding to Isabella. "Even in darkness, some hold on to light." Isabella felt a lump in her throat. The child's bravery, the wounded man's resilience, the disciplined calm of Apache, it all contrasted sharply with her own fragile certainty. She realized that the world she had fled from, the town she had left behind, had shielded her from reality. Here, nothing was hidden. Everything bore consequences. I want to help too," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. "Please, teach me. I can't just stand here." Apache studied her, the firelight glinting off the beads and feathers that adorned his body. "Are you ready to see more than you've ever imagined?" To face truths that will haunt your dreams? I am, she said without hesitation, surprising herself with the steadiness in her tone. I don't care what it takes. I have nothing left to lose. Apache's gaze softened for just a moment. Then you will learn. But understand this, survival is not about courage alone. It is about knowing when to fight, when to yield, and when to accept the darkness as a part of yourself. You will make mistakes and you will suffer, but those who endure are the ones who shape the world around them. He turned and motioned for her to follow. They moved silently through the camp, passing warriors who observed with measured eyes. The wounded man stirred, the boy assisting him, and Isabella's heart ached at the sight. She wanted to help, but she knew she had to earn her place. To prove she was more than a frightened outsider, Apache stopped near a rocky ledge overlooking the ravine below. The desert stretched endlessly into the night, illuminated by the pale light of a crescent moon. The wind carried the scent of sage and distant rain, a promise of change. Everything you've known is gone, Apache said, his voice carrying over the canyon. And yet, this place, this life, it is full of truths that few will ever face. Will you endure them? Isabella clenched her fists, feeling both fear and determination. She remembered her words from the day she arrived, I will give you everything. But now, she understood that giving everything meant more than wealth or promises. It meant surrendering to a reality far harsher than she had ever imagined. I will endure, she said, her voice steady. And in that moment, as the wind whipped across the desert and the firelight danced on Apache's strong, scarred form, she realized that the journey into the darkness had only just begun. The night deepened, and the desert seemed to exhale around them, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant rain. Isabella followed Apache silently, her boots crunching over stones as he led her toward the heart of the ravine. The fire from the camp flickered far behind, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like living things. You must understand, Apache said without looking at her, his voice low and deliberate, that darkness is not an enemy. It is truth, and truth is often cruel. Isabella swallowed hard, the words echoing in her mind. She had always believed life was a balance of right and wrong, of good and evil. But here, under the endless desert sky, she felt the harsh edges of reality pressing against her. Every scar on Apache's body, every measured movement, told her that he had faced horrors she could barely imagine. They stopped near a cliff's edge, where the wind whipped violently, tugging at her hair and clothes. Below, the canyon floor was cloaked in shadows, and the trickle of the creek glimmered faintly like a silver thread. Apache turned to her, his dark eyes intense, reflecting both firelight and moonlight. There is a man, he said slowly, who tried to betray me once. He thought he could hide in darkness and live without consequence. I found him. He paid the price. Isabella shivered, but she met his gaze. What happened to him? She asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Apache's jaw tightened. He disappeared. No one knows where he went. Perhaps he lives, perhaps he doesn't. The desert keeps its secrets, and so do I. He stepped closer, the shadows emphasizing the lines of his muscular, scarred body. You will see things that cannot be undone. You will hear truths that will burn in your mind. And you will either survive or you will be consumed. Isabella's chest tightened, but she forced herself to stand tall. I will survive, she whispered, her voice steadier than she felt. I've come this far. I can't turn back now. Apache's eyes softened slightly, a rare flicker of acknowledgement in his otherwise unreadable gaze. Good. Courage alone is not enough, but without it, you will never endure. A sudden movement below caught her attention, a figure stumbling up the rocky slope. It was the injured man from the camp, leaning heavily on a crude staff. His eyes were wide with fear, and his body shook from exhaustion. Apache moved swiftly, placing himself between the man and the edge of the cliff, his presence a barrier as protective as it was imposing. "He's not ready," Apache muttered, "but he will learn whether he wants to or not." Isabella watched, a strange mix of fear and admiration swelling within her. This man, this warrior, carried the weight of every life he touched, every life he saved or failed. She understood now that his strength was not only in his body, but in the knowledge of the darkness, the acceptance of what most people feared to even see. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly, voice trembling. "Why not let me fend for myself?" Apache's eyes bore into hers, unwavering. "Because I see something in you. Fear, yes. Desperation, yes. But also a spark. A refusal to be broken by the lies the world has given you. That spark. It can either consume you or it can light the way." Isabella's hands clenched at her sides. She had never been called strong, never been told that anything within her could survive the harshness of the world. And yet, here she was, standing before a man who had endured so much more than she could imagine, being challenged to endure her own darkness. The wind howled through the canyon, and the moonlight carved patterns across Apache's bare, muscular chest, highlighting the tribal jewelry that marked him as both protector and predator. He extended a hand toward her, not with force, but with expectation. "You will need to learn," he said. "Not from books, not from stories, but from life itself. The desert will test you. I will test you, and when the time comes, you will understand the meaning of giving everything." Isabella looked into his eyes, the firelight reflecting in the depths of his dark gaze. She felt the weight of her own promise. "I will give you everything." Not just wealth or possessions, but courage, trust, and perhaps even her soul. She took a deep breath, stepping forward. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm. And as the wind whipped around them, carrying the cries of distant hawks and the scent of rain, she felt a shiver of anticipation and fear run through her. The lessons of the desert, the trials of darkness, and the truths of Apache's world awaited her, and there would be no turning back. Dawn broke over the desert, pale light spilling across jagged cliffs and stirring the dust of the canyon floor. Isabella had barely slept, the night's lessons heavy on her mind. She rose from her makeshift bedding near the fire and watched Apache move silently among the camp. His bare, muscular frame glistened faintly with sweat as he adjusted supplies and checked the horses, his tribal jewelry clinking softly in the quiet morning. Every movement carried authority and grace, a reminder of the strength that came not just from muscle, but from a life honed by struggle and survival. "Today, you begin your first lesson," Apache said, breaking the silence without looking at her. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. "Do you understand why we endure what others flee from?" Isabella nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Because it makes us stronger?" she ventured. "Partly," he said, finally meeting her gaze. "But strength alone is meaningless. Understanding the darkness and acting despite it is what separates those who survive from those who perish. You must face fear head-on. Only then will you know what it truly means to give everything." They left the camp and followed a narrow trail that wound along the canyon walls. The desert seemed alive, and the morning light rock formations cast long shadows, and the wind whispered through the scrub, carrying scents of sage and distant rain. Every sound was amplified in the stillness, and Isabella's senses were alert, as if the desert itself were testing her. After a half-hour of walking, they reached a steep, rocky slope that descended into a hidden canyon. Apache stopped and gestured for her to watch. "There," he said, "a predator lurks below. You will not strike, you will not flee. You will observe. You will learn patience and timing. That is your lesson." Isabella's heart raced as she peered into the canyon. A mountain lion crouched low, its golden eyes fixed on a small herd of deer grazing nearby. Every muscle in its sleek body tensed with anticipation. Apache crouched beside her, his voice a low whisper. "See how it waits, silent, calculating. This is life, Isabella. Every choice carries consequence. One wrong move and death follows." Hours passed as they watched the predator, and Isabella began to understand the rhythm of the hunt, the subtle shifts in weight, the unspoken communication of instinct, and the raw, unrelenting logic of survival. Her fears slowly gave way to focus, and she realized that Apache's lessons were not just about combat or strength. They were about seeing life in its unvarnished truth, accepting the darkness without flinching. Finally, the lion struck, leaping with precision and speed. The deer scattered, but one fawn stumbled, trapped by the rocky terrain. Isabella flinched, expecting the predator to kill, but Apache's hand shot out, stopping her reflexive gasp. "Sometimes life demands mercy," he said. "Other times it demands decisiveness. Learning the difference is everything." She nodded, her heart pounding, as the lion, distracted by her movement, finally turned away and disappeared into the canyon. The lesson was clear: survival required judgment, courage, and the willingness to confront fear without hesitation. Later, they returned to the camp. Isabella felt exhausted, her muscles sore and her mind buzzing with the weight of the morning's lesson. Yet, in the presence of Apache, she felt a strange sense of purpose. He was teaching her more than survival. He was teaching her to confront the dark realities of life without being consumed by them. As she tended to the horses, Apache approached, the morning sun highlighting the lines of his muscular, scarred body and the glint of his tribal jewelry. He watched her quietly for a moment, then spoke. "You did well today. But know this, what you faced is only the beginning. The desert will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. People will betray you. Fear will seek to dominate you. And you will be tempted to give up." Isabella met his gaze, determination hardening in her chest. "I won't give up," she said. "I've come too far to turn back now." Apache's eyes softened slightly, a rare flicker of approval. "Good. Remember, giving everything is not about possessions. It is about courage, trust, and understanding the harsh truths that most refuse to see. If you can grasp that, then you may survive and perhaps even thrive in this world." As the desert wind swept through the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and distant thunder, Isabella felt a deep resolve settle within her. She was no longer the frightened woman who had stumbled into Apache's world days ago. She was a student of life's harshest lessons, willing to confront darkness head-on and ready to give everything she had to endure it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the canyon walls, turning the desert sky into streaks of blood red and gold. Isabella's legs ached from the day's lessons, but exhaustion had given way to an unfamiliar energy and intensity that came from seeing life stripped of pretense, raw and unyielding. Apache led her along a narrow ridge, their silhouettes stretching across the rocks like guardians of the wilderness. "Tonight," Apache said, his deep voice steady against the wind, "you will face your first test of trust. Survival isn't just about skill or strength. It's about knowing whom to rely on and when." Isabella's chest tightened. She had placed her trust in him from the moment she arrived, but the desert had already shown her how fragile such trust could be. She nodded, determination hardening in her heart. They reached a small plateau overlooking a canyon floor shrouded in shadow. Below, a stream glinted like silver, and the sounds of the desert night began to rise. The hoot of an owl, the distant cry of a coyote, the rustle of unseen creatures. Apache stopped and crouched, gesturing for Isabella to do the same. "See that?" he whispered, pointing toward a group of men moving silently among the rocks. Bandits. They have been tracking the same path as us for hours, seeking what they believe belongs to them. They do not understand the land, nor do they respect it, and they will strike if given the chance. Isabella's heart pounded. She had expected danger, but seeing it real and close sent a shiver through her spine. You will have to approach them, Apache said, his eyes dark and unyielding. Not with weapons, not with aggression. You will move silently, observe, and bring me information. Can you do that? She hesitated, fear gnawing at her resolve, but she remembered her promise. I will give you everything. She nodded. I can do it. Apache studied her for a long moment, the firelight from the distant camp casting flickering shadows across his scarred, muscular chest and tribal jewelry. Good, but understand this fear can sharpen you or it can destroy you. Use it wisely. Isabella crept forward, moving along the ridge like a shadow herself. Her breath was shallow, her eyes scanning every movement, every flicker of motion among the bandits below. She saw their crude weapons, their rough expressions, and their careless confidence. And she realized something: the desert had made her attuned to more than just fear. She could feel life around her, the movement of the wind, the shift in the earth beneath their feet, the rhythm of every living thing. She returned to Apache, silently signaling the number of men and their positions. He nodded once, approvingly, then turned his gaze toward the horizon. You see now, he said, why understanding the land and its truths is more important than any weapon. Life and death are decided by knowledge, by perception, by patience. Suddenly, one of the bandits spotted her, shouting a warning. Isabella froze, heart hammering, but Apache was already moving, swift and silent as a shadow. In seconds, he had dispatched the threat with precision, the bandit crumpling without a sound, the others too shocked to react immediately. She stood frozen, trembling. I thought I had failed, she whispered. Apache placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his eyes intense. No, you acted. You observed. You reported. That is how we survive. Fear is a tool. Courage is action. Remember that. Isabella swallowed hard, tears pricking her eyes. The desert had stripped away every illusion she had clung to, leaving nothing but the raw truth. And yet, in that harsh truth, she found purpose. Apache, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I will give you everything. Not just what I have, but what I am. Teach me. Guide me. I'm ready for whatever comes. Apache's eyes softened slightly, the rare flicker of acknowledgement that meant more than words. You are learning, Isabella, but the greatest trials are yet to come. The desert will test not only your body, but your heart and soul. And when it does, you must not waver. As the sun disappeared behind the cliffs, leaving the canyon bathed in twilight, Isabella felt a shiver of anticipation and resolve. She had survived fear tonight, she had faced the darkness, and she had given herself fully to the lessons of Apache and the desert. And she knew that tomorrow would demand even more. The journey was far from over, but she no longer felt like a frightened intruder. She was part of this harsh, beautiful, and merciless world, and she was ready to endure it, whatever the cost. The dawn broke slowly over the desert, pale light spilling across the rugged cliffs and shimmering canyon floor. Isabella's muscles ached from the days of training, fear and unrelenting lessons, yet a calm determination coursed through her veins. She had faced the darkness, endured trials that would have broken most. And now she felt a quiet confidence. She was no longer the frightened woman who had stumbled into Apache's world. Apache waited at the edge of a plateau, silhouetted against the rising sun. His long black hair framed his scarred, tanned face, and the beads and feathers of his tribal jewelry caught the early light. He looked every bit the formidable warrior she had come to trust and fear in equal measure. Yet beneath the strength, there was something softer, almost imperceptible, that had appeared only for her. "Today," Apache said, his deep voice cutting through the crisp morning air, "you face the greatest test. Not of skill, not of observation, but of heart." Isabella's chest tightened. She had endured fear, observed life and death, and survived countless lessons, but she knew this challenge would strike at her very soul. Below the plateau, the desert stretched endlessly. A group of settlers had been ambushed, their wagons overturned, some injured, some too terrified to move. Apache had found them the previous night, tracking the trail silently and waiting until Isabella was ready. "You must decide," he said, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Who deserves your help? You will risk everything, including yourself. Can you act without hesitation?" Isabella swallowed hard. The memories of her past, the betrayal, the loss, the townspeople who had abandoned her, flashed in her mind. She realized now that giving everything did not mean bargaining or pleading. It meant risking life, heart, and soul, even when the outcome was uncertain. I will," she said, voice steady. "I will do what is right." Apache's dark eyes studied her, and for a moment the canyon was silent save for the wind and distant cries. Then he nodded approvingly. "Then follow me." Together they descended the rocky slope, moving with the precision and silence of shadows. Isabella's heart pounded, but her focus was unshakable. She helped stabilize the wagons, guided the injured to safety, and offered words of encouragement to those paralyzed by fear. Every act, every movement, carried the weight of her lessons: patience, courage, observation, and mercy. One injured man, clutching his side, looked at her with a mix of awe and gratitude. "Who are you?" he asked, voice trembling. Isabella met his gaze, and for the first time she answered not as a frightened woman, but as someone forged by the desert and by Apache's guidance. "I am someone who has learned what it means to give everything," she said quietly. Apache watched from a distance, the morning sun casting long shadows across his muscular, scarred body. He had trained her, challenged her, and guided her through the dark realities of life, and now she had proven herself. Not only had she survived, she had grown. She had learned to act with courage, even when fear was all-consuming. As the last of the settlers were secured, Apache approached her. "You have done well," he said, voice low and measured. "You have faced darkness and come through it. Few ever do." Tears threatened to fall, but Isabella smiled through them, the weight of fear lifting from her shoulders. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. Apache's eyes softened, and for the first time he allowed a faint smile. "You have given more than you know, Isabella. But remember, this life will always hold darkness. What matters is that you face it with courage and understanding. That is what makes you strong." The desert wind swept through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of sage and the distant promise of rain. Isabella felt a profound sense of belonging, not just to the land, not just to Apache, but to herself. She had given everything: her fear, her doubts, her hesitation. And in return, she had discovered her strength. As they stood together, watching the sun climb higher, Isabella realized the journey had changed her in ways she could never have imagined. The darkness of life, once terrifying and consuming, was now something she understood and could endure. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she said quietly. Apache's gaze met hers. And in the silent desert morning, the bond forged through trials, fear, and understanding spoke louder than words. They would face the future together, aware of life's darkness, but undaunted. For the first time since she had arrived, Isabella felt whole. And in the endless, golden expanse of the desert, that truth was more powerful than any fear.